Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Shayantani Pal, Associate Professor, Department of Ancient Indian History and Culture, University of Calcutta. Today our subject is Indian culture. The paper is on Indian polity, and today we shall study on the polity and the administration under the Guptas. Here are our learning objectives. First, we shall study the sources from which we can reconstruct a picture regarding the polity and the administration of the Guptas. Then we shall study the polity, and under the polity we shall study the theories of kingship written during the period of the Guptas and how the king has been represented in these texts and also in inscriptions as a divinity, which is very important to strengthen the power of the king. Then we shall study about the ministers and the other functionaries involved in the administration. Then we shall study the forms of government, the subordinates under the Guptas, and the type of relationship the Guptas had with their subordinates. Then we will move on to the provincial administration. Then we shall study the status of the feudatories as reflected in the inscriptions of the Guptas. Then we will study the dues of the state, the judicial system, and then we will conclude our lecture. To begin with, the Guptas established a steady rule in a major part of northern India from 319 to 20 to 550 CE. Now this date 319-20, this is the beginning of the Gupta era, and it has been recorded in their inscriptions, all of which are dated in the Gupta era. Now by North India, major part of northern India, we mean that they had their capital in Pataliputra, which is in South Bihar, and they probably covered the major portion in their kingdom was comprised the present areas of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and also the outlying areas were ruled by their feudatories who were probably under their control. Now they continued the traditional model of bureaucratic administration, retaining the nomenclature of the dignitaries of the Mauryan administration. Now as we already know that the Mauryan administration was the first of its kind, which has been regarded a completely bureaucratic administration. The details of this administration we find in the Arthashastra of Kautilya, which probably belongs to the contemporary period, and there we find the structure of the Mauryan administration with a number of officials who should be involved in the administration. However, with regard to the ideology of kingship and organization of administration, the changes may be noticed during the Guptas, since the Guptas are removed almost by 300 years from the period of the Mauryas, since the Mauryas ruled in the 3rd century BC and the Guptas began their rule in 4th century AD. So there is a long gap of time. So there are many changes can be noticed in the administration of the Guptas as from that of the Mauryas. The power of the king was further strengthened from the Mauryan period, and in the Gupta period the king was supported by the Brahmanas to gain more and more power and exercise control and authority over the subjects. Under the Guptas, the subordinates and the local rulers controlled the outlying areas. By outlying areas, we refer to the areas outside Uttar Pradesh and Bihar that were difficult to maintain, as for example the areas in Gujarat or the areas in the northern part of the present Bengal Delta comprising West Bengal and Bangladesh. These are the outlying areas, or in Orissa. So these are the outlying areas which were probably controlled by their feudatories, because it was very difficult to maintain control over these areas from their capital at Pataliputra in South Bihar. Thus, under the Guptas, an elaborate organization of the provincial administration may be noticed. This is the first of its kind, since we do not get a separate branch of provincial administration during the Mauryas. The local people obviously had a significant representation in it. This is also a very important feature of the Gupta administration, that is the involvement of the local people. Now the sources for the study of the Gupta administration. The administration of the Guptas can be studied on the basis of their inscriptions. They refer to various ranks of officers, the administrative units, the tax names, etc. The land grants of their subordinates with reference to their names, and sometimes also without the names. We have the inscriptions issued by the subordinates of the Guptas, but how do we know that they were issued by the subordinates of the Guptas? That because they were all dated in the Gupta era. So we think that these were probably issued by the subordinates of the Guptas, who however wanted to assume more and more authority, and so probably they did not name their Gupta overlord always, but still they used the Gupta era in their inscription. The account of Fa-Hsien, who came during, he is a Chinese pilgrim who visited India. All the Chinese pilgrims probably came to India to study in the monasteries and to copy the Buddhist text to bring to their own country. So Fa-Hsien also came probably during the rule of Chandragupta II. Though Fa-Hsien is not at all concerned with the political matters, even he does not name the contemporary ruler, the Gupta ruler, that is Chandragupta II. Still he records the life of the common people, from which we can get some information regarding the life of the people in the Gupta period. The Narada, Brihaspati and Katyayana Smriti contain discussion on polity. Now these Smriti texts are very important for a discussion on the polity during the Guptas. These are the major Smriti texts, which were also called the Dharma Shastras, which were probably completed during the Gupta period. So they contain a lot of discussion over the polity under the Guptas. In this Smriti text, the most important change that we notice is the growth of the power of the king as depicted in this text. We call these texts the normative texts. Why normative? Because these texts, earlier these texts used to be called by the scholars the law books, because they thought, most probably by the European scholars who studied about our country, they called these texts as law books, but these were not actually law books, because these were not law. These are actually some norms which are set by the writers of the Dharma Shastras. Now who were the writers of the Dharma Shastras? The names of Narada, Brihaspati, Katyayana have come down to us, but most probably a single Smriti text was not composed by a single author. These were composed by several authors from time to time, but all of them were probably Brahmanas. So these Brahmanas, being the leaders of the society, they have laid down certain norms which were to be followed. But as we know that the law is not always, it is not necessary to follow the law in the society. So there are some deviations from these normative texts. Brihaspati says that in a kingless country, the occupation of agriculture, trade and money lending do not exist. The king was thus created as the leader of the social order. Narada even goes to the extent of asking the subjects to abide by the king's command, whether right or wrong, and to honor him even though he should be wordless. So please see that even when the king is wordless, the lawgivers or the writers of the normative texts instruct the people that they should follow him. Even a wordless king should be followed. So this is the norm set by the authorities in the Dharma Shastras. These data indicate that the power of the king reached its zenith in the Gupta period. How? With the help of these Brahmana authors of the Dharma Shastras. The rulers had full support from the priestly community to exercise his power over the subjects, because he had the full backup with the writers of the normative texts. Now Narada further says that the king should protect all orders according to dharma. Now dharma is very important in ancient Indian culture and polity. This dharma does not refer to any particular sect like the Buddhist, the Jainas, no particular sect. This dharma is the right way, the righteous path. What is the righteous path? As has been upheld by the writers of these normative texts, that what is right. So this is the dharma. It does not refer to any particular sect. So Narada says that the king should protect all orders according to dharma and would receive his share of agricultural produce as his vetana or salary for the protection of the people. So there is a contract between the king and his subjects that the king should protect the subjects, and in return the subjects should submit a share of their produce to the king. Now, what was the reaction, what was the response of the people to these types of norms set by the lawgivers? In the Kadambari of Banabhatta, this is a slightly later account which belongs to the beginning of the 7th century. A wise minister tells a young prince that some kings, being deceived by more than mortal praise by cunning men, consider themselves to be derived from divine particles and try to act as divine being. Thus they become ridicule the people. So see how people reacted, how the writers, the authors reacted to these norms set up by the Brahmana authors for the king and to the subjects. Now here are some titles assumed by the Gupta kings. The Gupta kings took exalted imperial titles like Maharaja Dhiraja, Parameshwara, Paramabhattaraka. What are the meanings? Maharaja Dhiraja obviously mean the great king of kings, the supreme lord. The Parameshwara, the Paramabhattaraka, all these are very high sounding, very exalted titles. So these were assumed by the Gupta kings. Now this Maharaja Dhiraja, this title in Sanskrit was most probably derived from the Greek title used by the Indo-Greek kings. What is that? That is Basileon, the king of kings. So this was Sanskritized, this Greek title was Sanskritized and it was converted into Maharaja Dhiraja, which was used by the Gupta kings, and it was very important because all the later king usually assume this high sounding title. Even the local rulers we find in the post-Gupta period, they assume these high sounding titles like Maharaja Dhiraja, Parameshwara, Paramabhattaraka. So we can say that Guptas probably set up the model that what title should be used by the king. These titles and some other descriptive epithets appear on the coins and inscriptions as we will see now. Here are the gold coins, the unique and very beautiful gold coins of the Guptas. On the upper left side you can see one coin. This is called the archer type of coin, where the king is carries a bow and he on the other hand he has an arrow, and so here the king represents himself as an archer. On the reverse you can see the goddess with a cornucopia and a noose in his both hands. And what is the epithet used here on the reverse side of the coin? That is Apratiratha. Apratiratha means invincible. So here the king says that he is invincible. Also below in the left lower right side of the slide you can see another gold coin issued by Samudragupta, and here he uses the same archer type, this is a standard type of coin where the king holds the scepter. As we have already discussed that the scepter is the symbol of the danda, which is practically the right of the king to hold the danda. And here Samudragupta uses the title Sarva Rajachetta, which means the exterminator of all kings. So the Gupta kings, apart from using these high sounding titles like Maharaja Dhiraja, Parameshwara, Paramabhattaraka, they also use these high sounding epithets like Apratiratha, Sarvarajachetta, etc. The Allahabad pillar inscription is a very important inscription in the history of the Guptas, since it was engraved during the period of Samudragupta and it largely discusses his conquest throughout India. So there we find the view that the king is a divine being, and he has been proclaimed in the Allahabad pillar inscription as a Lokodhamna Deva. Harisena, the court poet who actually composed this Prashasti, he describes Samudragupta as Lokodhamna Deva. What is Lokodhamna Deva? Deva means he is a god, and Lokodhamna, he dwells on earth. So Harisena regards Samudragupta as a god dwelling on earth. So the king is not at all a human being, but he is actually a god who resides in this earth in the form of a human being. And he was further made equal to the gods like Dhanada. Dhanada is Kuvera, Varuna, Indra and Antaka. So here Harisena wants to say the king is equal to God, or rather the king himself is God who only lives in this world as a human being. Here is the Allahabad pillar inscription. On the left side you can see the pillar. This is actually an Ashokan pillar on which you will find the inscription of Ashoka, and Samudragupta chose this very pillar to inscribe his inscription. Why he did so? The scholars had many views regarding it. Probably Samudragupta wanted to represent himself as a king like Ashoka. So he chose to inscribe his inscription on an Ashokan pillar just below the inscription of Ashoka. On the right side, you will find a picture of the Allahabad of the estampage taken from the Allahabad pillar inscription. This is a very important inscription of the period of the Guptas. Now the Yuvarajas and the Kumaras. The king was helped by the crown prince. He is also called Yuvaraja or Yuva Maharaja, who was next to the king in rank. They were again distinct from the Kumaras. Who were the Kumaras? The Kumaras were all princes of royal blood. The king had several queens, so there were several Kumaras who were sometimes entrusted with the duty of administering the provinces. So the Kumaras were very important in administration. The Allahabad pillar inscription refers to the nomination of the Samudragupta to the throne by his father Chandragupta I in the following words. What does Chandragupta I say? Come on, he says to Samudragupta, come on, O worthy one, and embracing him with hair standing on end and indicating his feeling, his father, perceiving him with the eye, overcome with affection and laden with tears of joy, but discerning the true state of things, said to him, so protect the whole earth. While he was being looked up with sad faces by others of equal birth. Who were the others of equal birth? They has been described as the Tulya Kulajas. So most probably there were many claimants to the throne, and from amongst them, probably Chandragupta I chose only Samudragupta to be his successor, while the courtiers were breathing cheerfully. Why they were breathing cheerfully? Because the new king will now take over. He will now ascend the throne. So they were very happy. So this description of the nomination of Samudragupta to the throne by his father Chandragupta I probably indicates that the law of primogeniture. What is the law of primogeniture? That the eldest son will always become the king. This was not probably followed always in all cases, because here in this case in the Allahabad pillar inscription we can clearly see a case where the next king had been chosen by his father. Now we shall study something about the ministers. They were called the Amatyas and the Sachivas. The Amatyas, Mantrins and Sachivas were the actual persons responsible for the smooth running of the administration. Whether there was a regular council of ministers is not certain, because as we have already discussed that in this period we do not have any text like the Arthashastra to discuss about the administration. We have mostly some inscriptions and some normative texts from where we get some data regarding the administration of the Guptas. Now Katyayana favors the appointment of the Brahmanas in the post of Amatyas. We do not know whether this norm was strictly followed during the administration during the period of the Guptas, but this is the norm set by Katyayana that the Brahmanas should be appointed in the post of the Amatyas. The post of the high-ranking officers were generally hereditary. As for example, Shikhara Swamin and Prithvi Sena, the father and the son, served Chandragupta II and Kumaragupta respectively. Similarly, Parnadatta and his son Chakrapalita served as provincial authorities in Shurashtra during the reign of Skandagupta. We have several other cases where we find that the son is succeeding the father in his post. The other administrative ranks. The Pratihara was the doorkeeper, or rather he was the palace guard. The Dandanayaka. Danda again has some association with the rod, the law of punishment. So the Dandanayaka was either a military commander or a judicial officer. The Ashvapati and the Pilupati, Pilu means elephant. The Ashvapati and the Pilupati were in charge of the horses and elephants. The Senapati was the commander of the army. But the Senapati had some other works to do, which we shall see later. Another new designation of high rank noted in the Gupta period in particular was that of the Sandhi Vigrahika. He was the minister for peace and war. He was very important. The Danda Pashika was in charge of the administration of justice. the Chauradharanika, which is very interesting. The Chauradharanika was entrusted with the duty of catching thieves. The Chatas and Bhattas were regular and irregular troops. They used to be prohibited from entering the gift land granted to the Brahmanas or religious institutions. It also indicates that the Chatas and Bhattas were probably entrusted with local policing. A new element, as we can find in the administration of the Guptas, is hierarchy, which is not at all present in the administration of the Mauryas. There is an increasing tendency of hierarchization of officers. Ranavir Chakraborty points to the use of prefixes Maha and Sarva before their name. Thus, we get reference to the Dandanayaka, the Mahadandanayak, the Sarvadandanayak and the Mahasarvadandanayak. Obviously, as these prefixes would suggest that the Dandanayak was powerful, but from him the Mahadandanayak was more powerful, the Sarvadandanayak was further more powerful, and the Mahasarvadandanayak was obviously the most powerful among all these ranks of Dandanayakas. They were Sandhi Vigrahika and Mahasandhi Vigrahika, Pratihara and Mahapratihara, and so on. Now, the Allahabad pillar inscription points to an interesting case of one person. Who is that person? He is Harisena. He held several important offices. This Harisena, the poet composer of the Prashasti, was a Kumaramatya. Who were the Kumaramatyas? As we have already discussed, that they were probably princes of royal blood, or they may not at all belong to the royal family, but they were entrusted with the local administration. He was again a Sandhi Vigrahika, that is, he was again a minister for peace and war, which is a very important post, and he was again a Mahadandanayaka, that is, he was associated with the army. Probably it is for this reason that the Allahabad pillar inscription contains such a detailed and vivid description of the conquest of Samudragupta throughout the whole of India. The forms of polity or the forms of government. Monarchy was the common form of polity. The other form of polity, that of Gana Sanghas, continued to exist till the Gupta period. Who are the Gana Sanghas? The Gana Sanghas were ruled by the Gana. That is, they were ruled collectively, not by any single king. There were no king in the Gana Sangha, but there was a chief who was nominated by the others, obviously by the all, not by all belonging to the Gana Sangha, but by the influential people, and people used to obey him. So, this is the structure of the Gana Sangha polity. However, we find the reference to the Gana Sanghas as early as the 6th century BC during the period of the Mahajanapadas. But what happened to them during the Gupta period? The death knell of the Gana form of polity was sounded by Samudragupta, who swept away the Gana Sanghas like the Malava, Arjunayana, Yevdhas and others in the Punjab. So, the Gana Sangha polity ended most probably during the Gupta period, and monarchy became the most predominant form of government or polity during the Gupta period. So, this monarchical form of government became the most important. Now, the subordinates. The Allahabad Prashasti refers to various ranks of subordinates who were subdued by Samudragupta. Apart from the kings of Aryavarta and Dakshinapatha, who were completely defeated by him, there were some Pratyanta Nripatis. Who were the Pratyanta Nripatis? They are the frontier kings, as well as the Gana Sanghas like the Malava, Arjunayana, Yevdha, etc., who paid him all kinds of taxes, obeyed his commands, and came in person to salute him. In this manner, they wanted to satisfy him. There were Atavika Rajyas. The Atavika Rajyas refer to the forest kingdom, most probably belonging to central India, whom he made to act like his servants. There were again some extra Indian rulers of the northwest and southeast Asia who surrendered themselves to him, offered their daughter for marriage to him, and requested for using the Gupta Garuda seal for administering their own Vishayas and Bhuktis. The Vishayas and Bhuktis refer to the districts and provinces, the divisions of the Gupta Empire. This indicates not only the authority and control Samudragupta exercised on the kings subdued by him, but also the differential status accorded to all the subordinates by the king. The status of the subordinates. Some of the subordinates, like the Parivrajaka Maharajas of Baghelkhand region, issued their land grants during the enjoyment of sovereignty by the Gupta emperors. So they refer to the Gupta emperors. Still they did not name the Gupta emperors. And still there are some other subordinates who issued the land grants without any reference to the emperors. But how do we know that they were subordinates to the Guptas? Because all of them use the Gupta era in their inscriptions, so we regard them as the subordinates of the Guptas. So there were various ranks of subordinates of the Guptas and to whom the Guptas accorded various status. Now we move on to the provincial administration. The linkage between the central and the provincial administration was maintained through the officers called the Kumaramatyas, about whom we have already discussed, and the Ayuktakas. The Kumaramatyas created by the Guptas from the body of the Amatyas were high officers, officers on the personal staff of the emperor as well as those in charge of the districts. The Ayuktas or Ayuktakas were entrusted with the job of restoring the wealth of the kings conquered by the emperor as recorded in the Allahabad Prashasti. They were also given charge of administration in provinces and districts. Provincial administration, which was controlled by the central. How? The empire was divided into provinces called the Bhuktis or Deshas. They were administered by officers with the title Uparika. The Bhuktis were subdivided into districts called Vishayas and were administered by the Vishayapatis or the governors of the Vishaya. The Kumaramatyas or Ayuktakas often occupied this post. The charters from North Bengal. By North Bengal, here we mean the undivided Bengal of the pre-independence Bengal, comprising present northern part of West Bengal and northern part of the country of Bangladesh. So the charters from North Bengal states that the Uparika Chirata Datta of Punravardhana Bhukti was serving under the feet of Emperor Parama Daivata Parama Bhattaraka Maharaja Dhiraja Kumaragupta. Chirata Datta in his turn appointed the Kumaramatya of Kotivarsha Vishaya. So what happened? The governor of the Bhukti, the larger unit, was appointing the governor of the Vishaya, the smaller unit. So Chirata Datta appointed the Kumaramatya of Kotivarsha Vishaya. Thus the emperor appointed the governor of the province, who in his turn appointed the governor of the district. In this manner, the control from the central authority was maintained in the provincial and local administration. Now, the role of the local bodies in the Gupta administration, which is very important, and this is a new element which we find only in the administration of the Guptas and not before in any one of the administration preceding them. The Dhanaidaho copper plate. Dhanaidaho is again in North Bengal. Of the 432-33 CE shows that the matter regarding the sale of land. All of the charters record the sale of land and the subsequent gift of land. So these are called the combined deeds of land sale and land donation. So this Dhanaidaho copper plate records the matters regarding the sale of land according to the prevalent rate in the Khatapara Vishaya was placed in front of the Gramashtakuladhikarana. Who were the Gramashtakuladhikarana? It refers to the Ashtakuladhikaranas, the most prominent 8 families belonging to the Grama. Now B.D. Chattopadhyay observes it was not an all-comprehensive village body, since different social groups of the village like the Kutumbins. Who were the Kutumbins? They were the wealthy class of agriculturists. The Brahmanas and the Mahattaras. The Mahattaras were again the elders of the village, not by age, but they were very influential in deciding the matters regarding the village. Now the Kutumbins, Brahmanas and Mahattaras figure separately in the inscription from the Adhikarana. So B.D. Chattopadhyay suggests that the Gramashtakuladhikarana was not an all-comprehensive village body. In another charter, there is reference to a Vithi Adhikarana. Vithi means a group of villages. Vithi Adhikarana refers to the office of the Vithi. The Vithi could have contained a group of villages, and the Vithi Adhikarana probably brought about the administrative integration of a number of villages within it. It was headed by an Ayuktaka and his Adhikarana. Now, the urban character of the Adhishthanadhikarana of Kotivarsha Vishaya. Kotivarsha Vishaya, the present Bangar area in the South Dinajpur district of West Bengal, the Adhikarana of this place had a very urban character. In the Damodarpur copper plate number 1 of AD 444, we find that the Adhishtanadhikarana, Adhishthana means city and Adhishtanadhikarana means the office of the city of the Vishaya of Kativarsha. It was headed by the Kumaramatya. It had members from the mercantile community and different occupational groups. Who were they? They were the Nagara Sreshthi or the guild president of the town, the Sarthavaha or the caravan trader, the Prathama Kulika or the chief artisan, and the Prathama Kayastha or the chief scribe. That is to say, this office had a more urban character and its members were all from the non-agricultural groups. But please remember that all these non-agriculturists were actually entrusted with the duty of deciding which land should be sold to the applicant. Now, the Datta family has hereditary governors of Punravardhana. From 444 to 543 CE, the Uparikas of Punravardhana assumed more independence and adopted the title Maharaja, which is very important because the Uparikas were actually provincial governors. Why they were assuming the title of Maharaja? Because the title Maharaja actually refers to the king. So, this indicates that the Uparikas were assuming more and more power and they were taking the title of Maharaja and they were probably comparing themselves with the king. The Damodarpur copper plate number 3 dated to 482 AD refers to Brahmadatta as Uparika Maharaja, and in Damodarpur copper plate number 4 the Uparika Maharaja was Jayadatta. So, you can notice that all the governors, all the Uparikas had the same name ending Datta. So, most probably they belong to the same family. So, they are called the Datta family, the governors of the Punravardhana. Even they hereditarily occupied the position of the governor of the province. Finally, a member of the royal family, he is called Rajaputra Deva Bhattaraka. He was brought to that position in the last Damodarpur copper plate of 543 AD. Soon after, the Guptas were removed from power. It may be seen thus as the last attempt on the part of the Guptas to hold their authority in North Bengal when most of their territories in other parts of the country were lost. The different characters of the Adhikaranas at different places, which is again important. In AD 447, when Damodarpur copper plate number 2 was also issued, the Boigram copper plate shows that another Vishayadhikarana under Kumaramatya Kulavriddhi was functioning at Panchanagari. Thus, at the same time, we have two Kumaramattas who were governing at different parts of North Bengal. Now, Panchanagari is not exclusively mentioned as a part of Punravardhana Bhukti. Vaigrama, that is present Baigram, the place of the land grant, is present Bogra, a district in Bangladesh. Now, R.G. Bosak, who originally published these copper plate charters, he points out that the Kativarsha was perhaps a more important Vishaya where the government had to provide better administrative arrangement for the Vishayadhikarana than in Panchanagari, which may have been a newly formed district at that time. So, the absence of Adhishtanadhikarana with urban members, as we have already discussed, who were the urban members, the Nagara Sreshthi, Sarthavaha, Prathama Kulika, Prathama Kayastha. So, the absence of Adhishtanadhikarana with urban members probably speaks of the rural character of the place of the land grant. The offices of different levels were organized, some of the panchayat type called the Gramashtakula Adhikaranas, suitable for the rural areas with prominent residents of the villages as its members, like the Kutumbikas, the Mahattaras, as we have already discussed. Some offices function at the Vithi level, preferably over a group of villages, and the official control from upper tiers of administration was not exercised at Sringavera Vithi or at Panchanagari area to the extent to which it was exercised in Punravardhana Bhukti. The Adhikaranas of other areas. Tira Kumara Matyadhikarana, the office of the Kumara Matya of Tira. Now, Tira was a Bhukti in North Bihar. We get reference to this Adhikarana in the inscription of the Guptas. The Vaishaladhishtanadhikarana, which is the city office of Vaishali, again in North Bihar. These indicate that district and municipal boards were also functioning in North Bihar like those in North Bengal. Now, the dues of the state. Land revenue was the most important source of income to the state since it was an agrarian society. So, land revenue was the most important source of income. Land revenue came from a variety of sources like direct tax on the land as well as a tax on the produce of the land. The charters instruct the residents of the gift land to pay bhaga, bhoga, kara, hiranya, etc. and other kinds of dues to the doni. Bhaga was 1/6 part of the grain share to be paid to the king. Bhoga was periodical offering. Kara is used in a general sense to indicate taxes. Hiranya is payments in kind. A significant change that had taken place was the increasing trend of paying salaries in land grants rather than in cash. Land grants usually gave the beneficiary hereditary rights over the land. Now, the Brahmanas were usually granted tax-free lands. Land grants undermined the authority of the king, and it led to the creation of independent pockets where the beneficiary's commands would be regarded as final. Still, the state surrendered it for the sake of maintaining control over the outlying areas. According to one explanation, by this manner, the state ensured its authority over the areas it did not exercise effective control. By creating a class of religious beneficiaries like the Brahmanas and temples, the establishment of the Jati Varna society over these pre-state areas was ensured. The judicial system. We do not get much detail regarding the judicial system. The Guptas had a fairly good judicial system. At the bottom were various councils which were authorized to resolve disputes that arose. Examples of these were the village assembly or the trade guild. The king presided over the highest court of appeal and he was assisted by various judges, ministers and priests, etc. Their presence depended on the nature of the case. The judgments were usually made based on the legal texts, the social customs or specific edicts from the king. Now we should conclude our lecture. The Guptas thus organized an elaborate administration throughout a major part of North India that served ideal for the subsequent rulers. As for example, we can see the application of this model of administration by a local group of rulers in the Faridpur area of present Bangladesh who adopted similar titles like the Gupta kings, who also adopted the names of the units like the Bhuktis, like the Vishas. All these appear in the inscriptions of the local rulers from Faridpur district. So Guptas probably served, the administration of the Guptas probably served as a model for the subsequent rulers. In many cases, we find the adoption of titles like the Gupta kings, the division of the kingdom in units like the Guptas, the similar administrative designations followed by the later rulers. However, the most striking feature of the Gupta administration appears to have been its ability to accommodate the local elements within itself. As we have already found that in the case of North Bengal, the Gramashta Kuladhikaranam, the village body, was entrusted with the duty of deciding the matter regarding the land sale. So the local elements always play a very important role in the administration of the Guptas. This we do not find in the administration under the Mauryas. Thank you.